Amara stood in front of the small, weathered house, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the sounds of the distant jungle. The heat of the sun beat down on her, and her heart pounded in her chest, but the weight of her decision kept her rooted to the spot. She had been married to Chief Ease, a man nearly twice her age, not out of love, but necessity. Her village, a place where opportunities were scarce, had offered little in terms of hope. Chief Ease had appeared like a savior. He promised her a better life in the city, away from the oppressive poverty she had known all her life. Her parents had encouraged the match, seeing the promise of security and the chance to escape. But now, standing in the bush, Amara felt the sharp sting of betrayal. "You'll be safe here," Chief Ease had assured her when he brought her to the secluded home. "It's for your independence, my dear. The city is too dangerous. You need time to adjust before stepping into the public eye as my wife." But Amara didn't feel safe. She felt abandoned. The house was simple, with a thatched roof and walls made of rough-hewn timber. A narrow path led to the nearest village, but it was hours away by foot. There was no electricity, no running water. Her days would be spent in isolation, with only the occasional visit from a servant or messenger from Chief Ease to check on her. Her eyes wandered over the sparse surroundings, and a wave of despair washed over her. She was used to the village life, but this was different. This felt like confinement, not a fresh start. She was alone in the bush, miles away from the bustling life she had imagined. As she unpacked the few belongings she had brought with her, she began to understand just how harsh life here would be. There was no luxury, no maid to cater to her, no sprawling mansion as she had envisioned. Only dirt floors, rough wood, and the oppressive silence of the wilds around her. But Amara was determined to make the best of it. She had no choice. She had made a vow to herself that she would survive, no matter what. The promise of security was too precious to let go, even if it meant accepting the harsh reality of her situation. Her first task was to get the house in order. She started with the small garden beside the house, pulling weeds and trying to plant what little she could. With each task, her mind wandered back to her family, wondering if they missed her or if they believed the lie Chief Ease had told them, that she was living comfortably and awaiting her new life in the city. As the sun began to set, Amara sat on the porch, looking out over the untamed wilderness. She would need to be strong. In this unfamiliar place, her strength would be her only ally. The promise of a better life now felt distant, like a fading dream, but she would hold on. She would fight for her future, even if she had to do it alone. Her journey had only just begun. The first few days in the bush were grueling for Amara. She woke before dawn, and the silence of the wilderness around her was both soothing and unnerving. The birds in the trees were her only companions as she went about her chores. Chief Ease's words echoed in her mind, "This will help you build character and independence." But as the days passed, Amara found that what she really needed was a sense of connection to the world beyond her tiny house. The heat of the midday sun drained her energy, and the physical labor left her exhausted. The house, though small, was a constant reminder of the promises that had been broken. She swept the dirt floors, washed clothes in a nearby stream, and tried to tend to the small garden she had started. But the soil here was dry and difficult, and nothing seemed to grow as it should. One morning, as Amara set out to collect firewood, she encountered a woman named Chidinma. The woman was walking along the narrow path that led into the bush, balancing a basket on her head. "Good morning, my daughter," Chidinma greeted her warmly. Amara smiled politely but didn't respond at first. She wasn't used to speaking much here, as there was rarely anyone to talk to. "I see you are settling in," Chidinma said, noticing Amara's cautious glance at the house. "The chief sends his regards. He is very proud of you." Amara's heart tightened. She couldn't shake the feeling that the chief was using her as an ornament, keeping her hidden away in the bush as a symbol of his wealth and status. "Yes, I am getting used to it," Amara replied, not wanting to betray her feelings to the woman. "But I am finding it hard to adjust to this place." Chidinma tilted her head. "It is not an easy life, living so far from the village. But it is not impossible. You will find peace here, in time." Amara nodded. She wanted to believe Chidinma, but something in her gut told her that she wasn't being told the full truth. There was more to Chief Iza's decision than just his desire to protect her. Why had he chosen to send her so far away from the city? Why had he insisted on her independence? The next day, as Amara gathered water from the nearby stream, she noticed an old woman watching her from the edge of the trees. The woman was thin and weathered, her hair a mass of white curls. Amara felt a shiver of unease. She had never seen the woman before, and yet something about her seemed familiar. "Are you new here?" the woman called out, her voice raspy but kind. Amara stood up, startled, and nodded. "Yes, I just moved here. I am Amara." The woman gave her a long, appraising look. "The chief's bride, I presume?" Amara's heart raced. "Yes, I am his wife." The old woman chuckled softly. "Oh, the young ones always think they are getting something better, don't they? But there is more to the bush than meets the eye." Amara frowned, unsure of what the woman meant. "What do you mean?" "You will learn soon enough," the old woman said cryptically. "But be careful, Amara. The bush has its own rules. Not all is as it seems, even in the silence of this place." Before Amara could respond, the woman turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving her alone with a sense of foreboding. The following days became a blur of hard work and growing frustration. Though Amara had tried to settle in, she found herself questioning everything: Chief Iza's motivations, the strange encounters with Chidinma and the mysterious old woman, and even her own future. She had been promised a life of security, yet all she had was a life of solitude and confusion. One evening, as Amara sat on the porch looking out over the sprawling wilderness, she made a decision. She would learn more about why Chief Iza had sent her here. She couldn't keep living in the dark, relying on vague reassurances. There were too many unanswered questions, and she was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant stepping into unknown and uncomfortable territories. Her new life had begun, but so had the journey to uncover what had truly been hidden from her. Amara's curiosity grew each day as she became more attuned to the strange atmosphere of the bush and the odd occurrences surrounding her. The encounters with Chidinma and the mysterious old woman lingered in her mind. She felt a constant pull to understand what lay beneath the surface of her life in the bush. Determined to find out more, Amara started asking questions. She would go into the nearby village for supplies, speaking with the few villagers who ventured out. Most were polite but evasive, offering little information about her new life. Amara's hope that someone might provide a clue about why she had been sent to this isolated house began to fade. One afternoon, while walking along the path that led to the village, Amara encountered a young man named Obina. He had been one of the village children she'd occasionally seen playing near the edge of the woods. He was carrying a bundle of firewood, his bare feet swift on the dirt path. "Good afternoon," Amara greeted him, stopping as he approached. Obina smiled shyly but seemed hesitant. "Good afternoon, Ma. You are the chief's wife, yes?" "Yes," Amara replied, watching his expression carefully. Obina hesitated again before speaking. "People talk about you. About the chief." Amara's interest piqued. "What do they say?" Obina looked around nervously, lowering his voice. "They say you were brought here not for your safety, but to keep you away. Away from something, or someone." Some people think the chief is hiding you. Amara's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Obina shrugged, his gaze darting nervously. I don't know much. I just know that the chief has his reasons. But be careful, Ma. The bush isn't kind to anyone who asks too many questions. Amara's mind raced as she processed his words. Hiding her? What could that mean? And why had no one in the village spoken openly about it? That night, as Amara sat in the dimly lit house, her thoughts weighed heavily on her. She needed to understand more. But who could she trust to tell her the truth? The following morning, she took a different path through the bush, heading deeper into the wilderness than she had ever gone before. Her feet moved swiftly, driven by an urgent need to find something, anything, that would explain why Chief Ease had sent her here. As she ventured deeper, the path grew narrow, and the trees seemed to close in around her. The air became thick with the scent of damp leaves, and the only sounds were the rustling of the wind and the occasional call of birds in the distance. After walking for some time, Amara stumbled upon an old, abandoned hut hidden in the trees. It looked weathered and forgotten, as though it had been untouched for years. Her curiosity piqued, Amara approached the hut cautiously. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dark interior. Dust and cobwebs filled the air, and the wooden beams groaned under the weight of time. But what caught Amara's attention was a small, wooden chest sitting in the corner. It was locked, but there was something about it that called to her. Her pulse quickened as she knelt beside it. She had no key, but she found a rusted iron nail nearby and used it to pry open the chest. Inside, she discovered a collection of old letters and papers. Most were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was faded. As she flipped through them, one letter caught her eye. It was addressed to Chief Ease, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. It spoke of a long-buried family secret, a betrayal that had changed the course of the chief's life. Amara's hands trembled as she read the letter. It described a forbidden love affair between Chief Ease and a woman from a distant village, a woman who had been pregnant with his child. The affair had been hidden from the public eye, and the child, a son, had been kept secret for fear of ruining the chief's reputation. The letter warned that the child was still alive, living in a remote part of the bush, and that Chief Ease had made a deal to protect his secret. The truth hit Amara like a thunderclap. This was why she had been sent away. She wasn't just being protected, she was being kept hidden. The child was the real reason for her isolation. Chief Ease had made sure she would never learn the truth about his past or the family he had abandoned. Amara closed the chest and stood there for a moment, her mind racing. Everything she had known about her marriage, about her life, was a lie. The promises of a better future, the security, the city life, none of it had been real. It had all been a carefully constructed facade to keep her away from something far more dangerous. With a deep breath, Amara made a vow. She would find the child. She would uncover the truth. And no matter what it took, she would free herself from the cage Chief Ease had built around her. The weight of the letter in Amara's hands felt heavier than ever as she carefully tucked it into her tunic. The air around her seemed thick, as though the trees themselves were watching, waiting. The hidden hut, abandoned and forgotten, held a secret far bigger than she had imagined, one that could change everything. With her heart racing, Amara turned and left the hut, retracing her steps back to the house. The journey felt longer now, each step pressing harder on her resolve. She needed answers. There was no turning back. As she returned to her house, she thought about the family secret. Chief Ease had hidden this child for years, but why? Was this child a threat to his position, or was there something more, a legacy, a history that Amara was now caught in? The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, but there were still too many gaps. When she arrived back, she found her small garden in disarray, the plants she had worked so hard to nurture now wilting under the unforgiving sun. She paused for a moment, thinking about the life she had been promised, a life of luxury, of security, and of freedom. But now, it seemed like everything had been part of a carefully orchestrated game. Later that day, Amara decided to take a risk. She would confront Chief Ease. But not directly, not yet. Instead, she would ask him about the child, the one he had kept hidden. As night fell and the jungle around her grew quiet, Amara set out once again toward the village. Her plan was simple: speak to the villagers, gather any information she could, and see if anyone knew the identity of the child. She wasn't sure who to trust, but she had no choice. Her need for answers had taken root deep within her. When she arrived at the village, the lights of the homes twinkled faintly in the distance. The streets were nearly deserted at this hour, but she found a small group of people gathered outside one of the huts, talking in hushed tones. Amara recognized them, Chidinma and a few other villagers. They seemed to be sharing news, but the conversation hushed when they saw her approach. Amara, Chidinma greeted her, her voice friendly but cautious. "What brings you here at this time of night?" Amara looked around, noticing how the group seemed to avoid her gaze. She steeled herself and spoke firmly. "I need to ask about the chief, about his family. There is something I need to understand." Chidinma exchanged an uneasy glance with the others, but then, to Amara's surprise, she nodded. "You are not the only one who has questions, child. The chief's secrets are known to few, but rumors spread like wildfire in the bush." Amara leaned in, her voice steady but urgent. "I know about the child, his son. The one the chief hid away. I need to know more. Who is he? Where can I find him?" The group fell silent. Amara could feel the weight of their hesitation. Chidinma cleared her throat before speaking again. "Listen, Amara," she said quietly, "the chief has kept this secret for a long time. His son is not someone who should be found. There are consequences to digging up the past. But you're right to ask. The boy, he lives in a remote part of the bush. It's not far from here. But you must understand, the chief has made it clear to everyone, no one is to speak of him. He has people who watch." Amara's heart pounded. "I don't care about his people. I need to know who he is. Why was he hidden?" Chidinma sighed. "Because the chief's son is not just a boy. He's a symbol. A reminder of a past the chief wishes to erase. There are people who would go to great lengths to protect that secret." Amara's mind spun. Everything had been a lie, but now, the truth seemed even more dangerous. She had to find this boy, the secret son of Chief Ease. But Chidinma's warning lingered in her mind. She wasn't just uncovering a hidden truth, she was stepping into a web of danger. The next day, Amara set out to find the boy. She had a vague sense of the direction she needed to go, but the bush was vast, and there were no guarantees that she would even find him. Still, her resolve was clear. She couldn't go back to the life of ignorance and isolation. As Amara ventured deeper into the bush, the dense canopy above her blocked out most of the sun. The path was narrow, overgrown with vines and underbrush, but Amara pressed on. The further she walked, the more she felt the weight of the jungle pressing against her. The air was thick with moisture, and the only sound was the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Hours passed before Amara finally came upon a small clearing. In the center of it stood a young boy, no older than 10 or 11, his dark eyes watching her with cautious curiosity. He was thin, dressed in ragged clothing, and his skin was dirt-smeared from the harsh conditions of the bush. Yet, there was a quiet strength about him, a resilience that spoke of his survival. Amara approached him slowly, her voice gentle but firm. Are you the son of Chief Ease?" The boy stared at her for a long moment before nodding silently. Amara's heart raced as she took a step closer. She had found him. But now, she faced an even more difficult question: what to do next? The boy's eyes met hers, and for the first time in weeks, Amara felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was within her reach, and with it, the power to change everything. But the journey ahead would not be easy. It was a path fraught with danger, secrets, and decisions that would define her future. Amara stood in the clearing, her eyes locked with the boy's. His expression was unreadable, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air around them was thick with tension. She had come so far, through the thick jungle, following only the whispers of rumors and the cryptic words of Chidinma. Now, standing before the child who had been kept hidden from the world, Amara felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. "I know who you are," Amara said, her voice steady but filled with a deep curiosity. "I've been looking for you. You are the son of Chief Ease, aren't you?" The boy's eyes flickered with a brief flash of something: fear, recognition, perhaps even relief. Slowly, he nodded. His voice was small, but there was strength in his words. "Yes, I am. But my name is not what you think." Amara frowned, stepping closer. "What do you mean? What is your name?" The boy hesitated for a moment, his eyes scanning the clearing as though checking for anyone watching them. Finally, he spoke. "My name is Obi. But you should not have come here. The chief, he will punish you if he finds out you were looking for me." Amara's heart raced. The boy, Obi, was clearly afraid of Chief Ease's wrath. She could feel the weight of the danger pressing in around them. Yet, she couldn't stop herself from pushing forward. "I need to know why he kept you hidden," Amara said softly, her voice unwavering. "Why did he send me away, pretending everything was fine? What is it about you that he's so desperate to keep a secret?" Obi looked down at the ground, his small hands fidgeting nervously. "It's not just about me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's about what I represent. I was born in a time when the chief, he was not a chief. He had a different life, a different name. And when my mother became pregnant with me, everything changed. They made him choose between his family and the title he now holds. And so, he chose the title, and he chose to abandon me." Amara felt her breath catch in her throat. The truth was even more complicated than she had imagined. Chief Ease's past, his family, his very identity, was all tied up in a decision that had shaped the man he was today. "Your mother?" Amara started but didn't know how to finish the question. Obi looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. "She was the woman he loved, but she died before I was born. I grew up here, hidden away in the bush. I was raised by my grandmother, but she died when I was very young. Now, I live alone, in secret." Amara's heart softened as she listened to Obi's story. This boy, this son of Chief Ease, wasn't just a secret to be kept. He was a person with a past, with his own life, full of pain and loss. She could see the loneliness in his eyes, the weight of a life spent in hiding, never allowed to be part of the world he deserved to know. "Obi," Amara said gently, "you don't have to hide anymore. You deserve to be seen, to be acknowledged. I want to help you." The boy shook his head. "No one can help me. The chief has made it clear that I'm nothing. His title is all that matters." Amara felt a fierce determination rise within her. She couldn't stand to see this boy suffer in silence any longer. She had already learned that the truth had been hidden from her, and she had come this far to uncover it. But now, it was about more than just herself, it was about Obi. It was about fighting for his right to be part of the family, to be acknowledged by the world, even if it meant going up against Chief Ease. "I don't believe that," Amara said, her voice steady and filled with resolve. You are his son. You have a right to be recognized, to be part of his life. And I will make sure that happens. Obi looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise. You would do that? Even knowing how dangerous it is? Amara nodded. Yes. Even knowing that. Obi seemed to hesitate for a moment, and then he took a deep breath. If you want to change things, you need to talk to the village elders. They are the only ones who can make the chief listen. They know about me. They know the truth. Amara's heart leapt at this new piece of information. The elders, those who had watched Chief E's rise to power, those who had known his past, were the key. She had to speak with them. But it wasn't going to be easy. The village had long been loyal to the chief, and challenging him would put her in direct conflict with the very people who held power. Where do I find them? Amara asked, her voice full of determination. Obi stood still for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. They gather at the old meeting place in the woods, near the river. But be careful. The chief's men watch everyone. If they see you talking to the elders, they will know what you're up to. Amara nodded. I'm not afraid. Obi gave her a small, grateful smile. You're brave. You remind me of my mother. Amara's heart softened at the mention of Obi's mother. She didn't know the woman, but she could feel the deep bond that had existed between them. Amara was determined now, more than ever, to bring the truth to light. I'll go, Amara said, her voice filled with conviction. I'll find the elders, and I'll make them listen. The weight of her decision settled in her chest. This was the moment that would change everything. She couldn't turn back now. The sun had barely risen when Amara left the house, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She was determined to find the elders, to force the truth into the open, no matter the cost. Obi had given her a sense of purpose she hadn't had in weeks, and now, with the knowledge of what Chief Ease had kept hidden, she could no longer sit idly by. She knew the path to the old meeting place would be treacherous. The chief's men were everywhere, and their watchful eyes would be trained on anyone who dared question his authority. But she had no choice. If she was to secure a future for Obi and for herself, she had to go. Amara moved swiftly through the bush, keeping to the shadow of the trees. The birds above and the rustle of the leaves were the only sounds she could hear as she moved cautiously toward the river, where the elders met in secret. Every step felt heavy, the air thick with the tension of what was at stake. She knew that confronting the elders could change the course of her life forever, for better or for worse. The journey took longer than she expected, and as the sun began to climb higher in the sky, Amara reached the riverbank. She had been here before, but never to this secluded part of the forest. It was a quiet place, hidden from the rest of the world, where the elders could gather without the prying eyes of the chief's men. As Amara approached the clearing, she saw a group of elderly figures seated around a large stone circle, their robes flowing softly in the breeze. They were deep in conversation, speaking in low tones, but as Amara stepped closer, one of them turned and caught her gaze. Amara, the woman spoke, her voice firm and filled with recognition. What brings you here, child? It is not safe for you to be here, especially not now. Amara swallowed, but her resolve didn't falter. I need your help. I need to talk to you about the chief. There is something he has kept hidden, something I know about now, and it must come to light. The elder, a woman with silver hair wrapped in a headscarf, studied her carefully. Her eyes were sharp, and her face, though lined with age, held a quiet wisdom. You are brave to come here, but you are also foolish, Amara. You do not understand the weight of what you are asking. The chief's power is great. Challenging him will not go unanswered. I know what he's done, Amara said, her voice steady but filled with the fire of determination. "I know about his son, his secret son. I know that he abandoned him and kept him hidden from the world. I want you to help me bring him forward, to make the chief acknowledge the truth." The elder's face softened, and she sighed deeply, as though the weight of Amara's words had struck a chord. She turned to the others, exchanging looks with the other elders. Then, after a long pause, she spoke again. "Amara, you speak of things many of us have long known but have been unable to change. The chief's past is not just a personal matter, it is entwined with the history of this village, the blood that runs through its people. His son, Obi, is not just a secret, he is a threat to everything the chief has built. And yet, he is also the heir that should have been. The one who was never given a chance to rise." Amara's heart raced as the elder's words sank in. "So, you knew?" The elder nodded solemnly. "We knew. We have watched the chief grow, rise to power, and make his choices. We did not interfere, for fear of what it would mean for the village. But now, you have come. And you bring with you the same fire that his mother once had, the fire to stand up for what is right." The others nodded in agreement, their faces a mixture of weariness and resolve. "The chief's rule has always been built on lies," one elder murmured. "But those lies have protected us, protected the village. If we reveal the truth now, it will shatter everything." "I don't care about the village anymore," Amara said, her voice gaining strength. "I care about Obi. He deserves to be acknowledged. The chief's lies can no longer control us. This village cannot live in fear of a man who is willing to abandon his own blood for power." There was a long silence as the elders considered her words. Finally, the woman with the silver hair spoke again. "You are determined, Amara. That is clear. But before we can help you, we must know what you intend to do. You are asking for a change that will be dangerous for everyone. The chief is not a man to be challenged lightly." Amara's mind was set. "I intend to stand up to him. I will bring Obi forward, and I will make sure the truth is known. No matter the cost." The elder sighed, her face drawn in thought. "Very well, Amara. We will help you. But know this, once the truth is revealed, there will be no turning back. The chief will fight to keep his secrets, and if he comes for you, he will not show mercy. But if you are willing to face him, then we will stand with you." Amara nodded, her heart firm with resolve. "I'm ready. I will face whatever comes." The elders stood, and with a solemn nod, the woman with the silver hair spoke one final time. "Then let us prepare. The truth is long overdue, and it is time for it to be known. But we will do it wisely, with careful planning. The chief will not expect it." With that, the elders began to gather their things, preparing to act. Amara could feel the gravity of the moment. This was the turning point. There was no going back now. She had made her choice, and with the elders' counsel, she was about to change the course of her life, and perhaps the future of the village, forever. The days following the meeting with the elders were filled with a sense of urgency and careful planning. Amara's resolve had never been stronger, but the road ahead was perilous. She knew Chief Ease would not take the revelations about his past lying down, and the elders, though supportive, cautioned her about the potential consequences. Still, with their help, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Amara's first task was to ensure Obi's safety. She had promised him that she would make things right, but now, the reality of what that meant began to settle in. The boy had lived a life in hiding, never allowed to experience the world as others had. She couldn't bear the thought of him being caught in the crossfire of the upcoming battle. Each day, the elders met in secret, preparing the necessary steps to confront Chief Ease. Amara was given a role in the gathering that would take place in the heart of the village. She was to bring Obi to the elders' meeting place, where they would present the truth to the villagers and demand that Chief Is be held accountable. It was a bold move, but Amara knew that the truth had to be shared, no matter the cost. One evening, as Amara was preparing for the crucial day ahead, she felt a shift in the air. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the promise of change. The village, which had once seemed so familiar to her, now felt strange and unfamiliar. The closer she got to the truth, the more the people she once considered allies seemed distant, even wary. It was then that Amara realized just how much power Chief Is held over the village. His reach extended far beyond his household. The villagers had become pawns in a game they hadn't asked to play, bound by loyalty to a man who had ruled them with fear and manipulation. She found Obi sitting by the edge of the garden, his small form hunched over as he worked with the soil. His face, usually filled with quiet defiance, now appeared somber and resigned. "Obi," Amara said, kneeling beside him. "Are you ready?" Obi paused and looked up at her, his dark eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know, Amara. The chief, he's powerful. He has many who will stand with him. If we do this, we might never be safe again." Amara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We don't have to do this alone. The elders are with us. We are doing what's right." Obi didn't respond immediately, his gaze distant, as if contemplating the weight of her words. Finally, he nodded, albeit with hesitation. "I trust you." That evening, as the village settled into a quiet night, Amara and Obi set off toward the meeting place. The elders had arranged to gather just before dawn, when the village would be at its most vulnerable, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. The path to the meeting place was quiet, the only sounds the rustling of the leaves and the distant calls of night birds. Amara's steps were deliberate, but her heart raced. This was it. The moment she had been building toward for weeks was finally here. As they arrived at the clearing, Amara was relieved to see the elders gathered, waiting for them. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with a sense of solidarity. These were the village's true leaders, the ones who had witnessed the rise and fall of so many, and they were prepared to take a stand. The elder with the silver hair was the first to speak. "Amara, Obi, you have come. Now, we begin." Amara nodded, looking around at the circle of elders. "What do we do now?" The elder smiled, a quiet determination in her eyes. "We make the village see. We force the chief to face his past and the son he has hidden. You will present Obi as he is, his rightful place among us, a truth long buried." The plan was simple but dangerous. At the village's morning gathering, the elders would present Obi as the son of Chief Is, the heir that had been hidden for far too long. The moment would be a shock to the villagers, many of whom had never even suspected that such a secret existed. As dawn broke, Amara and Obi, accompanied by the elders, made their way to the village square. The villagers, already gathered for their morning rituals, stopped when they saw the group approaching. The sight of Amara walking with Obi, the boy who had been nothing more than a shadow to them, was enough to stir whispers among the crowd. Chief Is, who had arrived early, was standing near the center of the square, his face stern as he greeted his people. His eyes narrowed when he saw Amara and Obi approaching with the elders. "What is this?" Chief Is's voice was sharp, his authority palpable. Amara stood tall, facing him with steady resolve. "This is the truth," she said, her voice ringing through the silence. "Obi is your son. You cannot hide him anymore." A wave of shock rippled through the crowd, and murmurs spread like wildfire. Chief Is's face turned pale as the reality of the moment hit him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He was caught in the act of being exposed, his carefully constructed world beginning to unravel before him. The elder with the silver hair stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "It is time, Chief. Your past can no longer remain hidden. You owe this boy, your son, a life of recognition. And you owe this village the truth." Chief Ease's fist clenched, his gaze flickering between Amara and Obi, and the villagers who were now staring at him, waiting for his response. It was clear that his power had been shaken, and for the first time, he seemed unsure. The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Amara could feel the eyes of the village upon her, their expectations hanging in the balance. This was the moment that would change everything. It was up to Chief Ease now, to either acknowledge his son and his past, or to fight to keep his secrets buried. The storm had come, and Amara, standing beside Obi, was ready to face whatever the chief would do next. The silence in the village square stretched on, heavy with the weight of the moment. Chief Ease stood frozen, his once unshakable authority now crumbling before the truth. The villagers watched, eyes wide, as Amara stood strong beside Obi, both waiting for the chief's response. For what felt like an eternity, Chief Ease said nothing. His face twisted with emotion, anger, regret, shame, before he finally spoke in a low, strained voice. "This boy," he began, his voice cracking, "this boy is a mistake. A reminder of a time I wish to forget." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a mixture of disbelief and anger at the chief's words. Amara stepped forward, her voice unwavering as she replied, "He is not a mistake. He is your son. He deserves to be seen, to be acknowledged. You can no longer hide behind your power." Chief Ease's eyes flickered briefly to Obi, who stood silently, his gaze fixed on the ground. The boy's quiet dignity was a stark contrast to the chief's outbursts, and it seemed to pierce through the last remnants of his resistance. In that moment, the villagers saw the truth. The chief's hold on them had been built on fear, but Amara and Obi were showing them the power of honesty, of standing up for what was right. The elder with the silver hair spoke again, her voice firm but kind. "It is time, Chief. You must choose. Will you continue to live in the shadows of your lies, or will you accept responsibility for the life you've neglected?" Chief Ease's shoulders sagged, and for the first time in a long while, his gaze softened. He looked at Obi, not with disdain, but with something closer to recognition. "I have wronged you, my son," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Obi's eyes lifted, and for the first time in his life, he saw his father not as a distant figure of power, but as a man who had failed him. Yet, in that quiet moment, something shifted within Obi. There was no anger, only the weight of the past, and a new understanding of what was lost and what could be gained. Amara stepped closer to Obi, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "You don't have to carry this burden alone anymore," she said softly, looking at the crowd. "We can all build a new future together, one of honesty, acceptance, and compassion." The villagers, many of whom had feared the chief's wrath for so long, now stood in solidarity with Amara and Obi. Slowly, one by one, they began to speak. Some expressed their anger at the deception, others their relief at finally knowing the truth. Together, they began to heal from the wounds that had been inflicted by years of silence. The chief, though reluctant, nodded in agreement. "You are right," he said, his voice steadier now. "I have kept too much hidden for too long. It's time to make things right." And so, the village began to change. Chief Ease, no longer the ruler of secrets, acknowledged Obi as his son, and the two began to rebuild their relationship, one step at a time. It would take years to mend the broken ties, but the foundation was laid on the truth that had been set free. Amara, now no longer just the chief's wife, became a symbol of courage and change. She had stood up against injustice, risking everything for a future where everyone, no matter their past, had a chance to be seen and heard. This story teaches us the importance of truth and courage. In the face of fear, secrecy, and manipulation, standing up for what is right can change not only our lives but the lives of others. Amara's bravery in uncovering the truth and Obi's quiet strength remind us that every person deserves to be seen and heard, no matter the past. When we choose honesty and empathy, we can create a world where healing and growth are possible. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful lessons it brings, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Comment below and tell us, what would you do if you were faced with a truth that could change everything? Let's keep the conversation going and inspire each other to stand up for what's right. See you in the next video.